Its introduction to ongoing projects campaigns. Had a bit of a rethink on what we do in this session, just because I think that session I'd probably talk at you for half an hour, and then within 15 minutes you wouldn't be able to remember most of the information on it. So what I'd really like to do, because we haven't yet, is a little bit of a session on our strategy, and just kind of introducing you to what that looks like and starting to link it to maybe some of your priorities and the things that you put in your manifestos. So apologies to the more kind of seasoned members of the SLT who this might not be new information for, but hopefully the little bit of group activity that we do at the end will still be kind of useful. And actually you as more seasoned people might be able to help some of the newer folks to sort of figure out how to think about their the things from their manifesto within our strategy. So, Kira, if you wouldn't mind sharing the slides, that'd be fab. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk you through kind of what our strategy is, and just as a starting point, talking about strategies can be quite intimidating. Just to give a very sort of high level idea of what a strategy actually is. A strategy is a guiding document that sets the very high level direction that an organization should be heading in. Any business or charity or really anything like sort of self-employed people or whatever should have a strategy that kind of guides their decision making within their business, and that's what a strategy serves us to do. As you can see there, our current strategy runs from 2023 to 2027. So the team that have just the student leadership team that have sort of just finished their term on the 31st of July were obviously kind of heavily involved in helping us to develop this strategy for 2023 to 2027. Obviously, that's something that we would come to look at again in probably the end of 2026, leading into 2027 for our next strategy. But yeah, let's move on to the next slide. So strategy is usually set out. I would like to think of it like a sort of pyramid. We start off with a kind of singular mission statement, and then we work out to kind of, as we get into more detail and closer down to operational level, we have kind of more different elements adding up to that. So our mission as an organization, hopefully you'll have seen this on our website, is to make a positive difference to all OU students. That's very broad, very high level. Hopefully it should be very, very aspirational and something that we try to achieve, and that the rest of the strategy sort of feeds into. Next slide. For underpinning that mission, we have a vision that is set out with these 4 statements, obviously about empowering student voice, working collaboratively with the university, to place students at the kind of heart of decision making, building inclusive communities, and providing obviously relevant quality services. All of these things you might think seem like sort of so obvious that they don't need saying, but they do need saying. And if they're in our strategy, it's something that we can constantly refer to and say, is that a part of what we should be trying to achieve? Now, those are the two, the mission, the vision, the 2 highest parts of our strategy, and they exist at a kind of very high level that doesn't give you particularly any detail about how we do those things. But as we go down further, we get into more of a kind of objective level of what we're trying to achieve. So Kira, if you go onto the next slide. So coming out of those vision statements, shall we call them, are our strategic aims. And these are the things that generally as a operational organization that we keep very much in mind all the time. So when we're thinking about doing something new, or whether we want to continue doing something, providing a service that we're providing a community event that we're providing, we're mostly asking ourselves, does it fit into one of these four strategic aims? So these are, as you can see, I'll read them out just in case anyone's struggling to see the screen. Create a welcoming environment and champion accessibility for all. Increase engagement through evidence-based decision making. Enable students to lead, represent, and advocate. And embrace change to ensure that we are future-facing and sustainable. So, like I said, anything that we're thinking about doing, we sort of measure it against these four statements and say, can we as an organization justify this? And I guess what I should probably have prefaced this whole thing with is that the strategy is ultimately owned by the board of trustees. So when we look at these strategic aims and even the statements previously in the vision, we can almost look at them as guidance from our board of trustees as what they want us to be focusing on. And obviously the board of trustees, the great thing about it is it cuts across the student leadership team. So we have student representation on the board of trustees, but also it's kind of stepping away from the day-to-day of what you guys do and sort of looking at things from a strategic perspective. So, as I said, these four things are the key things really that when I'm doing my job, I keep these things in mind. And really, I think it's a great thing if you're thinking about, initiatives that you want to start, campaigns that you want to lead, things that you want to change, things that you want to try and stop doing, or anything like that. Really thinking about it and being able to view it through this lens will enable you to make a sort of stronger case for like, well, we should be doing this because we say we want to embrace change and be future facing and sustainable. That means we should look at our carbon footprint or something like that, and that is a justifiable piece of work in relation to our strategy. So next, on the next level down in my pyramid, Kira, next slide, is objectives. So under each of those strategic aims, we have three objectives, and these kind of provide the sort of composition of each of those strategic aims. So they give a little bit more flesh on the bones of those strategic aims is maybe a good way to think about it. So when we talk about, creating a welcoming environment and prioritizing accessibility, there's some objective statements there like, creating flexible and relevant engagement opportunities, making sure that our online spaces for students to engage with each other are safe, and that we're sort of prioritizing EDI and accessibility considerations at all levels of decision making. So this is where you can start to kind of apply quite specific thinking to what's within our strategy. Now, an example of this might be the chat platform that I don't know whether some of you may or may not be aware of this. This is where I'm starting to go into what the session was supposed to be in terms of ongoing projects and campaigns. But hopefully you may be aware, you may have heard about a chat platform that we're trying to launch as an OU student specific function that we are sort of piloting a rollout for sort of as we speak. I think like these couple of weeks. Yeah, obviously we can provide some kind of very clear links at this stage to certain elements here that you could pick out, providing safe online spaces for groups of students to interact under that one on the left hand side, welcoming and accessibility, being future facing and sustainable, sort of trying to modernize our offering to students based on what their needs are, that kind of thing. So lots of things that we do may fit into multiple areas of the strategy, and actually the more areas of the strategy you can fit your ideas into, the more relevant that piece of work is to what we're trying to achieve as an organization. So just to sort of finalize that very quick whistle stop tour of the strategy, if we go on to the next slide, Kira, this is it laid out in full. Um, so if you really blur your eyes, you can create a bit of a pyramid sort of structure from the top to the bottom. You start off very narrow, you've got one statement, and as you go down, you have kind of more specificity within each of the statements about what we're trying to achieve at each level. So I've got through that a little bit quicker than I wanted to, or than I planned to even. Obviously, the quicker the better. But I'm aware that's a very kind of a very fast overview, and I would say, do go onto the website. Our whole strategy is on there, and it's laid out in a very, hopefully, visually friendly way for people to engage with, and it's worth as key parts of our organization. You are our executive team, being familiar and comfortable with that. Do spend some time with it. Before I go on to a little group exercise that we've got to do, does anybody have any questions, or was there anything that I said that wasn't particularly clear, or anything? Because we do have a couple of spare minutes. And if you don't think of any questions now, but you come up with something later, do feel free to either drop me a message on Microsoft Teams. Now, hopefully you've all got access, or obviously send me an email, and more than happy to sort of help you get to grips with anything. Okay, so I'm gonna assume that everyone was sort of happy with that explanation, and I'm sure obviously some of you may have had lots of you know interaction with strategy in your day job, or like previous jobs, or other volunteer roles maybe that you've been involved in, and so apologies if it's a little bit kind of teaching you how to suck eggs, but for other people it might be brand new, and some of this stuff is it's a different way of thinking about things. So the reason, obviously, as I've sort of explained throughout, kind of you're coming into the Students Association with your own ideas, your own ambitions, your aspirations, and therefore it is important that the ideas you have really fit within our strategy. And I know that can sound like we're telling you what ideas you can have or not, but the exercise that I want to try and do next, hopefully, should show you that this strategy it has space, lots of space for you to fit in the things that you want to do. I mean, we've got a whole strand in that strategy that is enable students to sort of lead and advocate, which, we very deliberately built in to make sure that our student leadership team especially have the opportunity to kind of really put their stamp on what we're doing in that 2-year term that you're in your posts for.